What is going on, guys? My name is Demetri, and welcome to the Rise Productive Podcast. In today's episode, we have a guest, Cullin McGrath. We're going to talk about minimalism, a little bit about Cullin's life, and his interesting story about how he bought a house at 21 years old, productivity apps, and the bear thing. A little bit. I don't like that too much. Get ready for episode 4 of the Rise Productive Podcast. What's up, Cullin?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, great to have you. Cullin is in a similar space to me on the interwebs and YouTube, get that good old productivity, self-development channel started up. So just wanted to have him on. He's a cool dude. We talked a little bit before this, but tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm 24 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado. I just moved here about 3-4 months ago. I work for a really cool software company out here. And yeah, super into self-improvement, human psychology, that type of things, just like you are, and run a YouTube newsletter, active on Twitter, just about everywhere. So yeah.
Living the dream.
Living the dream.
I'm just going to do a little quick plug. His name is his social media on all platforms. The links will be down below. So tell us a little bit about the college story that you told me about going undergrad, the old night school thing and everything like that.
Yeah, my experience was a little bit interesting just because I'm a little bit debt averse. So I tried to work as much as I could through college. So I've really been working since I was 16, started entry level like most of us, just at a restaurant. And as I was getting my degree, I was working at a technology company that was just outside of just inside Michigan, excuse me. Yeah, and so I got my associates, and then while getting my bachelor's degree, I was working as a technician and then working pretty much full-time through the day, normal 9 to 5, and then going to night classes, which conveniently the college was literally like 10 minutes up the road. So it wasn't like an extraordinary amount of work, but yeah, going to 3-4 night classes a week while working was not that fun. But I will say that like the people were definitely more interesting because my peers that I was working with during that time were generally like other working professionals. So I was afforded the opportunity to meet a lot of really interesting people through that.
Oh. Cool stuff. I went the traditional route, so no idea how you did that. I wouldn't have been able to work full time and do it at the same time.
Yeah, dude, it's super, super tiring, to be honest. I remember graduating was like one of the best days of my life so far.
A bunch of relief, just like all this stuff taken off your plate. So you're working out at a software company, right? And Cullin told me a little bit before this that he bought a house at 21.
Yeah, so similar scenario. I hate to talk about myself sometimes, but similar scenario. Been working my whole life, so I've been socking away money, but at the same time too, and I think similar to you watch a lot of YouTubers like Graham Stephan or for example. And there's some other ones that talk about just like home ownership and having equity at a young age. And I was renting an apartment all the way up until I was like 2021, and it was pretty much going to be the same cost. I mean, the home ownership in Michigan is generally like it's pretty cheap relative to other areas like LA or Colorado. So my mortgage actually ended up being cheaper than the rent that I was paying for.
Wow.
And then pair that with renting to some of my friends. I mean, it was a win-win scenario. We were all paying below market rate.
Oh my God, that's pretty cool. Wait, so you had roommates at the same time?
Yeah, so I had 2 friends that moved in with me. They've since moved out, like most people kind of bounce around places, but I have actually 3 people that live there now. I still own the house, even though I moved a few states away. So I still own the house. Yeah, okay. So I've three people that are living there now.
Oh, that's cool. That's a little real estate.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, there's an interesting component to it where you become responsible for this thing, right? Like, yeah, I'm responsible for the well-being of the people living in the house. So that means I need to start thinking about things that I hadn't thought about before, like smoke detectors and I don't know, like appliances and like, man, like the fridge goes down, got to get that fixed right away, and just stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, and you're a couple states away, so that's kind of a pain.
Super big pain. I'm fortunate enough that one of the guys who moved in is super handy and he's willing to like jump in and help as needed. So
yeah, I don't know if you're gonna always have a tenant like that.
No, probably shouldn't make that my A plan, eh?
Yeah, you're gonna have to hire someone out there, or be like, hey, I'll pay for a family member to live there or something, free rent.
Yeah, well, so ironically, my cousin does live there, but I don't think he's very handy. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a really cool story. I definitely do watch a lot of Graham Stephan. I don't talk about him that much on the channel, but the whole owning real estate, assets are good. I want to ask you a question about the whole, you said you rented for a while. Do you mean you rented like from the ages of 18 to 21 then?
Yeah, I pretty much moved out as soon as I was 18. It's actually a funny story if you want me to tell it real quick.
Sure.
Super big numbers guy, so I've always worked in analytics or whatever it is. And I remember like pretty much just after I turned 18, and I do wish I had stayed home a little bit longer, but I literally wrote out like a list of my finances, went to my dad. I was like, listen, I can do this. I've crunched the numbers. And he's like, this is probably the most excessive out of any of my siblings or any of your siblings that have done this. But yeah, go ahead, man. Like live your life.
What you want. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. You crunch the numbers and we're like, yeah, I got to get out of here. Can't pull the trigger there for me. Still, I mean, the whole, when you go to college, usually like, yeah, I'll live at college and then go home. But you're you're on an interesting little path there. I definitely, like, once again, I don't know. I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'll say to that real quick too. Like, people should just stay at home as long as it's like feasibly possible. I mean, you just sock away money. It's a no brainer. If your parents don't mind, like, it's honestly like it's setting yourself up for better success in the future. I wish I had stayed home like 2 more years.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really have much expenses when you're at home. The expenses you have are what you choose to have, like the stuff you randomly spend on. Kerry V, I feel like, talked about this in that interview that he did with Matt Diavella. Like, people should just move back home. Do you remember that? Have you seen that interview?
Yep, I did. I did watch that one.
Yeah, just the best thing for people right now is if they're in a bad situation, just move back in with their parents.
Yep. It's honestly, and people are scared of it. I don't know. There's like this whole stigma on society about like living with your parents, everything like that. But it's nonsense.
Yeah, I think that's just an American thing.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly, I grew up in a house that both my parents are from other countries, and a common thing they always bring up is that back in Greece or back in Italy, like there's a thing called a 3-flat that a lot of people do, where they just have like, the grandparents live on one floor, the parents live on one floor, and then the kids live on the other floor when they become adults, because it's monetarily better. They usually see each other pretty often anyways, but they don't really get together besides when they eat and stuff. So they have like their own separate homes sort of, and it's advantageous for everyone. But in the United States, it's just like living with your parents is that whole, you're kind of losing at life. I don't know who invented that stigma. Probably just consumer culture. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely different here than other places.
Yeah, and I know even on that same note, like even in other cultures, like it's more acceptable to have like the grandparents even living in like a duplex with you too.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty common.
Yeah, because like it's like I said, is financially more advantageous, but I don't know if it's they just want to take care of them or what it is, but it seems kind of, I don't want to say morally nicer, but like when your grandparents get to a certain age or when the older generation gets to a certain age, I don't know how moral it is granted, nursing homes are an iffy topic right now with everything going on. So I'm just saying, like, if no one lived in nursing homes, hotspots in certain situations wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, and there's always like the general fear, like with nursing homes and things like that. Like, I don't know, there's that general fear that they're not going to give the same like level of care, quality of care that like we might be able to give, right?
Yeah, and if you're next door,
yeah, heck,
and someone's home, yeah, be nice to them. So interesting topic there.
Tangent.
No, expect that tangent. So going off of the whole minimalism topic that I've been talking about in the podcast recently, I just wanted to talk about how you were introduced to it and the whole self-development niche as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great topic. I I was introduced to minimalism, I think honestly like most people are, which was Matt Diavella's channel, and then
Yep.
and there's a ton of other YouTubers that do really awesome stuff like that. Like I know Just Joe Lee talks about minimalism.
Oh, I watch him too. I didn't know you
really?
watch him.
Yeah,
he's cool.
He's awesome. And it's a little bit more of like a practical minimalism. I love Matt Diavella, but I see a little bit more of his like day-to-day application, like his like low waste lifestyle and things like that. But yeah, so I was introduced through that, and I mean, honestly, I've always had a weird attachment to belonging. So like since I was a little kid, yeah, I've always owned a bunch of stuff, had way too much stuff, and I never let it bother me. Like honestly, like clutter everywhere. And after watching those videos and probably reading a few books like Essentialism and other things, I started to get a lot more intentional. And it's weird how that mindset shift made me start to want to get rid of things, but then also
I feel like it's an awareness.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like it's like a shift in your brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never knew it was a thing, and then it's a thing, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't need half of this stuff.
Yeah, and like I just feel like intellectually cluttered. Like I feel like I can't start my like work day or can't do things with like just stuff sitting around everywhere. It's absolutely insane like how much it can like weigh on someone.
Yeah, the correlation between the physical of things being cluttered and the mental of things being cluttered is I talked about it last week with Keaton, but like I notice if I'm more stressed and there's a lot of stuff on my desk, there's a correlation between how well I can do my work.
Yeah 100%.
Yeah, I just feel like even on top of that with virtual clutter, like if I have too many tabs open, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Too many programs?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, my laptop's kind of on its last leg, so I can't have more than like 4 up anyway, but
Oh, okay. All right. Well, are you a Mac PC guy?
I'm a Mac guy, yeah.
Okay.
I bought it secondhand too, which doesn't help, yeah.
Yeah, big PC guy.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and it even like it transcends just the intellectual part of it too. Like when I was moving to Colorado here, for example, like 3-4 months ago, I like didn't even realize still how much stuff I had. I mean, like it accrues, and it just makes like if you ever move, even like that much more difficult as well, right? Like there's so many more benefits.
Where are you gonna? Moving trucks are a thing, yes.
Oh yeah.
But once you're done with the moving truck, you got to move all that stuff into the new place. So not exactly easy there. I definitely think I keep telling myself this. Granted, it's probably because I'm a Matt Diavella fanboy. but on the topic of minimalism, like I'm gonna get the same gray shirt.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just gonna get 20 of those. Well, okay, that's excessive. I don't know. How many? You know.
Yeah, I don't know. He might have around 20 actually. He did that video on it, but
yeah, I think he said he had like 10 of the one gray one and the 10 of the black or the lighter gray one. I know he has 2 shirts, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing a long and a short sleeve. And that's about it.
There's a lot to be said for that like absence of choice when you're like choosing your wardrobe or whatever it is. Like that's what a good old Zuck does as well, I think.
That's what Mark Zuckerberg does? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate picking what I'm wearing in the morning. Like even for videos, like I'm debating on just making it a joke that I have 20 of the same pair of a shirt. You know, I just always wearing the same shirt when I record because then it wouldn't be a problem. I mean, like, yeah, do I like this color? I don't know. I'm colorblind, by the way. I'm severely colorblind. So that doesn't really help.
No.
And that's why I like gray. That's why I like black. That's why when I see the simplicity, what the heck was that? That's not a word. Simplicity of minimalism, it helps me in that sense too, because it throws me off a lot. Like picking wardrobes, this funny story. My mom, when I was younger, literally had to help me like figure out what matched in my closet.
So you're like, you're completely colorblind then?
I can't tell the difference between blue, purple, green, yellow, and yeah, I'm technically blue, purple, red, green.
Dang.
And yeah, okay, when they do the test at the eye doctor,
yeah,
you know, like with the little number thing,
yep,
or when people Google the number thing, I look at one, I just start laughing.
Yeah,
that tells you how colorblind I am.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm just like, yeah, I don't, there's not a number there. You're just messing with me at this point. But they're like, no, I see one. I'm like, well,
No,
good for you.
yeah, it's our job to not lie to you. So
I'm like, yeah, good for you, but can't see it. So that makes color correction and lighting a little bit difficult. I usually have to get a second opinion.
interesting. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
hey, I'm always here if you ever need like, a second opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad I got the initial setup, but I got some stuff, and I don't know if it's fine. Anyways, enough on my color blindness. Yeah, I'm gonna get some shirts at some point, but
You should run the black and the gray. I think it's a good look. The blue V is a good look too, though.
the blue V's all right.
Yeah,
Well, if Cullin says so,
I
then
approve.
yeah, okay. If he approves, then 10 out of 10. We both talked about this beforehand as well, but productivity apps are a big part of our life, and Cullin's talked about them a little bit on his channel, and I wanted to have him speak a little bit on what he uses, what impacts him, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So on my channel, I've been a big advocate, or even historically an advocate for Notion, which is just definitely super popular right now. It's very trendy, but for good reason. It's a great app, and it lets you kind of do whatever you want. Like generally with productivity apps, I feel like they kind of like put you into a little box. Like you have to use it, like Evernote, for example, you have to use it exactly as it's designed, right? Yep. But Notion gives you that ability to do whatever, like a Kanban board or like notes or just general like workflow type things. It's even like applicable at the enterprise level for businesses. So there's a lot of great use cases, and all of that to say, I'm really like gassing up Notion right now, but I'm actually using Roam Research, which is kind of another really popular one as well for like my general note-taking, workflow, productivity type things.
Yeah, that's new. I watched the video on Thomas Frank that he put out about it, but if I'm right, it organizes notes in a way that you more think, because that has a bunch of toggles and drop downs and interconnecting links, right?
Yeah, so it felt super awkward for me to use at first, just because it's like it's almost counterintuitive to every other thing I've used before, and that's because I think they make the argument that it works a little bit more closely to how our brain works, just like a general stream of consciousness versus like this kind of like segmented like note, I don't know, spot. For lack of better words.
Yeah. We get what you mean.
Yeah. Thank you. So all that to say, like, yeah, it's just general stream of consciousness. So I'm like, generally just use it as like a note taking, but then it has like bidirectional linking, right? So like by that, I mean, I can essentially link any single note or topic together between other spots. So I'm not like stuck putting this piece of information in one bucket and another piece of information in another bucket, and then like having to remember to go to those spots. It intuitively links things, and then you can very intentionally link things together as well. Which
pretty cool.
Yeah, which is super important for someone like me that writes a lot, because I can go and I can look at, for example, Marcus Aurelius, and then see things that I linked or tagged together with it, which can just help me a little bit with that, like that research component, and then just rediscovering my information instead of like tucking it away and hiding it.
Yeah, because when you do outlines or you're doing research on something, even in something like Notion, for those of you guys that don't know, I mention it every once in a while, and my plan is to talk about it more, but Notion is like the main thing I use for everything. I use my task management, time management, habit tracking, everything. I've built out a lot of things on Notion, but there is a bit of segmentation that I really run into some trouble with when I'm doing research. You know, like I have hyperlinks to things, but then I just have to open up a browser tab. If I didn't have two monitors, I really don't know if it'd be like a feasible process.
Yeah, and on that same subject too, the thing with Notion, you have to be very intentional about how you set it up, which is awesome. I mean, that's what it's built for, and it's really good for. But at the same time too, I would catch myself spending way more time like configuring Notion versus actually note taking.
Yeah. I spent the first month I had Notion like setting up the different systems I had. It was a lot of upfront investment, and it was worth it, I guess, in the end, because I have it set up to where, you know, my calendar, my task management calendar pulls into this other page that has a bunch of inline tables. You know how that works?
Oh, nice.
Like you can, you can just copy and paste in there. And it's called my daily planner. And all of my tasks for the day populate in like from the task calendar and from my routine calendar, which is my habit tracker. And it has a couple quick links for things that I'd commonly need to use throughout the week, like not checking the weather necessarily, but like what my plan is to run on whatever day of the week and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's got like my main stuff in one spot, but building that out was a pain. And I love Notion. I'll use it probably till the end of time, but I am considering using some other options for different aspects. What is your opinion on not necessarily just putting everything into one basket?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. I have a lot of opinion on that.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I feel like I've been stuck like thinking that I have to get everything into one system at all times, and a lot of that I think comes historically from my career. I was essentially at one point for like 3-4 years, my job was literally built to consolidate our systems. Like I was, my whole intention was that we had 10, 15 different platforms, and I was responsible for building out an ERP that would consolidate like 90% of those, right? So like, for whatever reason, that's been stuck in my mind since that point. But at the same token, there is value in using things that excel at certain tasks or specialize, right? Like for example, Rome has an awesome like checklist feature. So similar to Notion, right? Where you can put in a little note and then add a checkbox and then like, hey, it's a task, you complete it. But that's about the full extent that it goes, right? Like there's no like date options or assignment or anything like that, which is completely fine. Or you could build it out that way. But I went for Todoist just because I was kind of struggling with task management and things like that. And part of that was just my workflow, I'm sure, and discipline. But at the same token, if I can use Todoist which has an awesome app and an awesome web app, to excel at what I want to get better at, such as being a little bit more intentional about my work and like when I'm completing things versus just a running list of tasks, breaking it out into like a weekly, hey, this is what I expect to get done kind of thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of what can be said about that is talked about in an Ali Abdaal video. I remember him putting out a couple weeks ago, and he talks about how the different productivity apps that he has are considered tools in his toolkit.
Yeah.
And he said his pushback against the concept of you should have everything in one system, it's not making you less sort of scatterbrained. It's not making you more scatterbrained or more spread out and less organized. In a way, in some sense, if you have different things that are best at specific tasks. Like Evernote is where he just puts his brain dumps.
Yep.
Because it's good for that, right? And sure, could you make another page in Notion about it? Yeah, but there comes a time when segmenting is actually a good thing, because then he never ends up putting his brain dumps in Notion. He knows he's got to put them in Evernote.
Yep. That's a great point. 100%.
Because for me, I sometimes feel like I get maybe a little overwhelmed with all of the different information I have in Notion.
Yep.
Like I said, I mean, habit tracking, task management, calendar, project management, because I have all my YouTube and stuff in there. I think it's very good for project management. I will always say that. And planning and calendar and to-do lists, it's pretty good at. You have to put some work in though for the to-do list part, because like I have a lot of status boxes. You know what those are?
I'm not sure. Oh, are those the ones where you're like, it's more like the drop down, or no?
No. So it's the checkbox that you add as a property, because Notion has properties within pages. It's always weird. When I remember first using Notion, I was like, why is everything literally a page? It doesn't make any sense.
And then it's a shift.
Yeah. And then you use it and you're like, oh, wait, that makes it more, you use a lot of different things through that. Like I have all my different schoolwork. I actually had like schoolwork and work all together in Notion, and I did a really good job I wrote down like little notes on how far I got in the homework, or I'd drag and upload the files of updated homework projects every single time I'd finish the task, because I like block out my time and then I make a page based on a template for whatever it is, like whether it's YouTube work or schoolwork or a podcast session, and then I like write a little bit of a note, and if there's files that are related to it, I upload it there, because then I have Notion has unlimited storage. I'm gonna take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So It's a really good app. I probably would have used Todoist actually for to-do lists. But to be blunt, Notion was free.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So can't beat that.
Free. Notion was free, and I was still in school, as well as they have that credits program where you can get a lot of free credit.
I did that same thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, can I turn around a question on you real quick? Because you said something
sure.
that was interesting. You mentioned earlier like a daily planner type thing. Is that what you?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you find that like, man, I set up a daily planner, but I very much struggled with that like daily intentionality, like going and making sure that I'm going in and checking in and doing it and working on it. Like I would forget it days at a time, and like I scrapped that entire thing because it didn't work for me. How are you intentional about it? Like how do you approach that every day? Or is it just like an innate thing that you just know to do?
I think for me, I've always been big on planning. I've always been big on, I want to know what I'm doing before I wake up. And what makes it easier is I actually have something called a framework, which I've actually never talked about on the channel, or I didn't write about in my book. But it's a plan of what a normal week should look like, right? So you set up time for when you're going to work. You set up time for when you're going to do schoolwork. You set up time for when you're going to exercise. And you try to stick to that as much as possible. And then 2 times a week, I basically put my framework into my task management calendar as best as I can, besides new events that come up. Then I adjust. I'm good at making those adjustments. But the daily planner, I usually already know what's pretty much going to go on because I have the weekly framework of like, Wednesday, most of the time is when I record most of my YouTube videos.
Yep.
And I know going into that day, kind of the routine that goes along with it. I think the daily planner part is just a reminder of what time I got to do it. It's really helpful for school because I would block out when I would necessarily do a homework task. I think of time sections more as what you can do in a block schedule thing. I don't like to write in my Google Calendar, this is the time I'm going to do a specific task.
Yeah, that feels very like boxy, right? Like you're like stuck.
Yeah, so I put work time. Literally all my Google Calendar is kind of funny when you read it. It says time after everything, which now that I think about it, if it says time after everything, isn't that just an excessive use of the word?
Should be implied that it's time spent.
Wait a second. Okay, that just made me really rethink my whole life. But besides like wake up and lunch, dinner, breakfast, which if you really think about it, when you usually eat.
Yes. Yep.
So for my daily planner or my task management system, I know when I'm usually going to eat.
Or for me,
ideally like to run
the nutrition of a 12-year-old, I don't know what I'm going to eat, but
yeah.
Anyways, not to interrupt
you. It happens.
You've got the runner's discipline.
Yeah. Running's the thing. So I run a lot, people, but I want to talk about that more at some point on the channel.
Should.
But I got to find the right balance.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's a different entire genre of what I could be talking about. It would fit into the health and wellness, and I do have a lot of experience of working out. I mean, on average for the past, I guess 7 years now, I've ran between like 40 to 65, 70 miles a week for that long. And it'd go a lot into helping people find some sort of fitness activity that they like to make them healthier. But I got to find the right balance. Still figuring out what I'm doing.
That's nuts, man. I ran a mile the other day, and to put into Allie's words, I felt like a waste man. I could barely run more than a mile. It's tough.
It's tough. And you're at altitude, though.
Yeah, that's the problem. In Michigan, I do a little bit better, but man, the breathing kills me here.
See, that's the thing. I dream about training at altitude.
That's the funniest thing. My friend said it's like I'm training with like a weighted vest on right now.
Yeah.
And when I go back to visit my friends in Michigan, it's gonna be like taking it off. I'm gonna like run like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, I know the reason that happens, for those that don't know, is when you train at altitude, there's less molecules of oxygen in the air because it gets thinner. And then it trains your, I think it trains your red blood cells to oxygenate air better. So then when you go down to sea level, for about 2 to 3 weeks, you're getting more air and your blood cells are trained to take in more air. So you get what I'm saying? Like it was depriving it. And then you go down and it's like, oh, extra, thanks.
That's super interesting. So it like normalizes at a certain point though? So like after that 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's a very big misconception that the gains of altitude training are long-term. It is essentially it is a benefit regarding your mental strength of training at a harder place, but like physiologically, you really don't gain much after, I think, like a month it normalizes. Your blood cells obviously aren't going to stick to the same thing all the time. Think about it like this. When you're sick, you make more white blood cells to fight when you're sick. Yeah. Why would your blood continue to produce more well-oxygenated red blood cells if the air is fine again?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, thanks for ruining, making me have to rethink my life now, though. I thought I was going to be like an expert runner in Michigan, but now I don't know what
you're like a month.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm training for now, but
it's really good for like priming for a race.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. You know, you go down to sea level and then you race and it's awesome and you're oxygenated. Then you go back to train at altitudes for the next one. So that's kind of the whole point of that. That was running. Congratulations, Rise Productive Podcast. You talked about like Demetri's favorite thing for once. But yeah, I block out my time. It's really good to set time when I do things, and then the tasks go within that based on a framework I have, and I try to adjust. It's hard because your week changes all the time.
Yeah. So
I understand what you mean with the daily planner of like,
dude, not only does your week change, sometimes your hour changes. Like
completely.
Yeah. Like you
completely.
I would spend all this time planning and be like, well, my boss just ruined my week. There we go.
Completely agree with you on there. And it can even change with the weather. I mean, if you're someone who's trying to work out and you don't have a treadmill or something like that, and it decides to start pouring rain, thanks, Illinois, by the way.
Yeah.
You gave us a little bit warmer weather and now you won't stop raining. Thanks. Anyways.
It rained here last night. I feel you.
Yeah. Your whole week can change. Your whole day can change. Your whole week can change. And it's all about understanding, in my opinion, it's all about understanding what is the number one thing on your priority list. So for you, you have a full-time job. So that is obviously the number one priority.
Yep.
And then YouTube things fall in somewhere in between. Like, is this the next priority? Is my social life the next priority?
Yep.
And I don't know if, I'm trying to remember where I found this from, but I was on a Keep Productive tutorial that wasn't done by Francesco. It was weird. Somebody else came on there and
he does those collabs sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And and I did this without even learning about it, but I prioritize my life into different like tags and segments, right? So during the school year, number one thing is school. The next thing is running. The next thing is working on stuff like for YouTube or whatever. And then I put social after that. Obviously, in some senses, like the family relationships you have, the personal relationships you have should go ahead of work, but you need to block out time a little bit more than you block out social, in my opinion, or else it'll never get done.
Yep.
Because sure, someone could pull you from doing the work and you can succeed that every once in a while, but if you never put it down on paper that you were going to work in the first place, you're just straight up never going to work.
Yeah.
On the side projects, on that other stuff.
Well, so that's the thing I struggle with a lot too, like with balancing priorities, whether it be like at one point it was school, now it's my career, and it's like these passion projects that I'm chasing. Like it reminds me of this Jim Rohn quote. I think it's Jim Rohn. We'll have to fact check that after, but it's, if you don't plan your day, someone else will, right? So if you're not intentional about your time, then someone else is going to fill your calendar as much as possible, whether that be like a friend asking to hang out, which is fine, or your boss throwing a project on your plate, right? Like if you don't have that very intentionally planned time to work on YouTube videos and to do podcasts, then like you're never going to make time for it.
If I didn't take the time to say I'm going to research different people in my niche, try to reach out to them, I never would have started talking to Cullin.
Yeah.
I never started talking to Keaton the other week. I never would have. I've been reaching out to a lot of people, and I've been very intentional with when I'm going to do that. I have like block schedule time for something called cold outreach. Like I just
That's
I'm
awesome.
talking to people, and a lot of LinkedIn engagement and those sort of things. And if I never did that, it has long-term effects. If I don't do that one thing, this podcast today is me talking to myself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, and we'll talk about this later, but people are very scared to reach out. Like cold outreach it is kind of a scary thing, right? But generally you'll find that most people are open to having a conversation, right? Or talking.
Especially right now.
Yep. Especially right now when all of our social lives have completely evaporated.
I'd rather talk to someone over the internet than not talk to anyone at all. Actually kind of funny. We're making a rule in the house today to not talk about the thing.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I like that.
I was like, Mom, I love you guys, but I just don't want to hear about it for one day.
Yep.
Let's pretend as a family that it doesn't exist for one single day.
Yep.
And we'll just talk about things that we want to talk about. Like
as if it's normal, right?
As if it's normal, because this has been hard. I think it's been hard. And that's kind of the tangent I'm going on the next part of this segment.
Mm-hmm.
Besides us talking about the ways it's improved our lives or the ways it's changed our lives, like besides this podcast and us bringing that up, I'm literally just not going to talk about it. I'm not going to look at news about it because it's really a lot, isn't it?
No, I completely agree. And dude, it's overwhelming, and like, it's hard to know what's the truth and what's not. And of course, everyone with an iPhone has an opinion about it, and it's tiring, man. On the same note, and I struggle with the same thing too, because some days I like to like just pretend it doesn't exist, but then like the back of my head feels this like, I don't know if it's like a social responsibility or what, to make sure that I'm well informed and like I'm watching it and tracking it. Because I mean, I don't know, I could go on about this forever, but I completely agree with you. Like at some point, like we do need to just kind of work our way to normality a little bit.
This could be our new normal for a little while, right? And I think on a bigger level, what I was trying to say to the family when I'm saying we need to not talk about this for a day is, if we really are going to get this to be our new normal, how can we expect to always talk about it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's normal, it doesn't always need to be a topic.
Yep.
Now, that sounds kind of off a little bit, but think about little day-to-day things. Do you really talk about the fact the mail got delivered? Like, does that need to be a topic all day?
Yeah, I hear you. It's I don't know.
It's a hard balance.
Yeah, it's a hard balance. And there's one of those things like where sometimes if you're not talking about it, then people aren't acting on it too, right? And who's, I don't know. Yours and my opinion on it doesn't really change like what researchers are doing for a vaccine or whatever either. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that's the second side to it too.
Yeah, I've been talking with people about this a lot, but when something comes out that's controversial about everything, you know what my response has been? Okay, but what does that mean?
Yep.
And they go, well, that means they're taking advantage of it, or whatever's going on. I don't want to say anything that's going to get this video taken
controversial.
Off, but if people don't like something, my always response is, okay, so what does that mean for you? Like, what can you do about it? Not to be cynical, not to be rude, but unless there's some sort of election that's happening, last time I checked, you can't change somebody's actions in the government.
Yep.
Like, you elect them, and then free reign, pretty much.
Yeah.
Can't really do much about it. So,
well, so it's funny, the stance I've taken on like at least internet related discussion about this, and you might have seen it. I posted on like LinkedIn and Twitter yesterday, but I called it a somewhat in jest, called it a life hack, because I mean, if there's someone that's posting something and they're just consistently being negative, or they're throwing out conspiracy theories that are stressing you out, whatever it is, like if you're not the type of person, like it's very easy to mute and block people and just move on.
I saw you post that, and I totally agree with you.
Just move on with your life, right? Like there's no use. Like you could comment and you could reply and put your opinion on it, but at this, like, you're not going to change their opinion. They're not going to change yours. So you might as well just not even like have the conversation.
It's like the rule of thumb about the What are the two things you're not supposed to talk about at holidays? Religion and politics?
Yeah, I think they say religion, politics, and money, actually.
Oh, really? Money too. Well, that's fair. That's a good one to avoid.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like, a lot of times I'm starting to notice that trend again. You remember the trend in 2016 before the election?
Oh, yeah.
Of people getting into arguments on the internet.
Just to argue half the time, I think.
just to argue. And they really can't change each other's opinion.
Yep.
And it's sad that people could be using their energy in so many different ways. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's not your right to express your opinion. It is your right to express your opinion. But there's got to be a point where people realize arguing blindly about things that the other person isn't going to change their opinion about. Once you realize that they're in that state of mind of, I'm going to attack you rather than trying to have a logical conversation about our differences, drop it.
Yep.
Just get on with your day. It's not helping you. Mentally, it's a waste of time.
I generally draw on like stoicism for that type of thing. And it's very similar to exactly what you're describing. It's that like that thought process that you shouldn't be bothered by things that are out of your control. And like what, for lack of better words, what like clowns are posting on social media about this type of stuff. it's not worth your time, and it's not worth my time. And honestly, like it's not worth their time. So in me commenting, I'm helping them out a little bit too.
You really are. It's similar with clowns/trolls on the internet that are like causing negative hate on videos for no reason, or any sort of negativity in general. When you acknowledge it, it feeds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Them. They love that.
And,
they just,
and I'm not a huge, I admire the guy a lot, but I just don't watch his content as much anymore. But like Gary V, his whole thing is like, is coming at people with empathy, right? Like if someone posts some negative thing, like you come back at them like, hey man, like,
hey, are you okay, bro?
yeah, you're all right. You want to talk about it? Like I'm here. And honestly, like it's crazy how much that can diffuse someone. If you're just like, listen, like I totally agree with you. This all sucks. Like, let's just move on.
Let's just move on. Let's talk about you. How are you? You know, like just, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Get all nice about it.
I'm a shoulder for you.
I'm a shoulder for you. Yet sometimes people just need to hear that.
Yeah.
And it's hard with everything going on. But I just do want to say that everyone, I hope you're staying healthy. It's been a weird time.
Yeah.
And as much as we are saying like, you don't have to talk about the topic. We don't want to talk about the topic in general. Like it is a big deal. We're just trying to probably say that sometimes letting yourself get away from something that's negative for a little bit is good. It's good for your mental health. And I think you agree with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. To summarize that too, like don't be ignorant to reality, right? Like don't shut yourself out from what's going on, but at the same time too, like you don't have to obsess with it all the time because it's just serving to upset yourself, right?
Yeah, and with anything, too much of something, even a good thing, is too much. You know, that's why people take a day off of work a week, or they take the weekend off, because even if they're doing what they need to do, sometimes it's just, you got to separate yourself from that so you can take a little bit of a mental reset on it. And you might not actually understand your own thoughts if it's all you're thinking about, because you're getting a little bit of information overload.
Yep.
Which happens a lot.
Yep.
I do want to talk to Cullin about this really cool thing he's doing, and that he started before the Rona thing. So tell the people.
Yeah. Assume you're talking about the whole, okay, cool. The Zoom ordeal. Yeah.
Yeah. The Zoom ordeal.
Yeah. So, glad you brought this up too. It's interesting. So back when I was in Michigan, I had an awesome career. I was very, very fortunate to have the job that I had out there. But I did realize that I didn't have the professional development that I needed. I mean, there's only so much you can learn from books or from reading things, right? At a certain point, like you have to go out and do things and learn things and have conversations with people, right? Something that we're all missing right now. So and again, this is pre this whole scenario, but I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn randomly, people that I looked up to, whether it be like CTOs in the area or software professionals or people that, not even just, like it could have been business development as well. Like just people that I thought were interesting and that I thought would serve to have a good conversation with. And on that same note I said earlier, like I was honestly blown away by how many people are receptive to having a conversation and having a cup of coffee, especially as people get a little bit older, like some of the a little bit like the more older people that I've spoken to, like they've been having a fulfilling career for a while, and like people hit a point where they want to impart their wisdom on other people. Like they want to help younger people like you and me succeed in the world, right? Like, I mean, that really is kind of what the world's all about, is building each other up, and most people follow that ideology. So
yeah.
A long-winded way to say, I was having these conversations with people, meeting them, and really like it changed my career. Like I got a job through these conversations. I got 2 jobs through these conversations. Really cool. Yeah, 2 jobs. I got all sorts of wisdom. I got business ideas. I probably wouldn't have started a lot of this stuff had it not been through like ideas I worked through those conversations. Okay. I probably, and this is not an exaggeration, had 50 to 75 like coffee things. I was trying to set up 1 or 2 a week. Yeah.
How long? Wait, and how long of a time period? Like.
Yeah, this is over the span of probably like a year, maybe. So it's
that's still a lot.
Yeah, and some weeks cool. I'd be busy or there'd be holidays. Yeah, and man, I've met some of the most incredible business leaders in Michigan, and I hope to carry that out here. But all that to say, I guess before I get on to the second part, like if you're like feel like you're stunted in your professional development, like no one's gonna figure that out for you ever, right? Like at a certain point, you need to go and go and seek that out yourself. So yeah, we're in this point now where we're all kind of mostly forced to stay inside. And I've been on Twitter a lot, and I know I was telling you a little bit, texting you a little bit about that and just how cool I find Twitter. But secondary to that, like I'm amazed even through that like LinkedIn ordeal and through Twitter, just how connected we are with people, but then like simultaneously disconnected as well, right? Like we like each other's tweets and we follow each other, but we never really have this like face-to-face conversation that you and me are having right now. So I tried to find a way to foster that a little bit more organically, like these relationships that have meant so much to me in this short amount of time. So I pretty much just posted a tweet out and said, hey, I want to have as many conversations with as many of you as possible. And a lot of that stems to like, it's somewhat selfish reasons, right? Like I'm working on a video that to talk about the same exact thing, but secondary to that too, like, man, I'm learning so much from these conversations. Like, sometimes, like it's just, ordinary people like you and me living our lives and going through the motions. But so many of us like have these things in our heads that aren't really unlocked unless we have these conversations and we don't think about them. So, I mean, I've spoken to people in Brazil and Indonesia and Mexico so cool. and all over the states. So Nashville and California. Yeah. I've probably now had 15 to 20 of these. And some of these people, like I'm starting to like consider my friend now. Like we had, what was once a 15 to 30 minute scheduled conversation. Some of the conversations went for 2 hours, which is nuts, with someone that I had never met and that lives in a different country entirely.
Sometimes it's just that different perspective from a different part of the world. A lot of people don't get that.
Yep.
There's a fair amount, I'd say, of the not only American population, but population of every country that doesn't leave their own country. And it's kind of hard to ever get the opinion of someone from another place if you don't talk to them.
Yeah. And I'm learning, you're absolutely right. I'm learning so much, like, and some of it's pretty funny, honestly. Like, my now friend in Indonesia, he said that they closed the McDonald's out there, and this is in relation to that which must not be named, I assume. But
wait, did they close it and then they held a funeral for it?
Yes.
I saw this on his Instagram. That's so funny.
That was insane, man. It was hilarious. I was like, wow. I mean, it's funny that they're doing that, but also not good because it's like directly against what they should be doing, which is staying at home. But either way, all this stuff that like we would never have any idea about unless we unlock it through conversations, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's really cool that you're doing that.
Thanks.
If you want to see updates of him randomly doing this, check out his Instagram because it's always on his stories. And I see the examples and I'm like, oh, he talked to somebody. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I just love the idea. How long do you think until you can make that video?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I thought this was going to be like a 1 or 2 week thing, but I've been having so much fun with the conversations. Like I genuinely look forward, and I'm waking up sometimes at like 5 or 6 a.m. to have them because of the different time zones. But I'm having so much fun with it. Like I I'm going to definitely continue these types of conversations forever, honestly. But that video, I'm going to have to cut it out at a certain point, and for the sake of the video, or the writing. So probably like a month or two out from that.
That's cool. That makes me want to do it, to copycat you, but like,
no,
it makes me want to reach out to people. And I'm actually, you know what? It's not a bad thing if you do what he's suggesting.
So that's the best part about this too. And I've had 2 people on Twitter reach out to me and ask my permission to do this same thing. And I always say like 2 things. First of all, I'm not the person that invented cold outreach. So don't feel guilty about reaching out to people. And secondary to that, like I would rather have that, right? Because it directly supports the mission I'm talking about, which is everyone sharing knowledge and connecting with each other, and building each other up.
I think from a certain standpoint, the fact that we're both doing this self-development niche, like as a YouTube topic overall for what we're doing, it shows that there is a part of a lot of people who definitely want to reach out and talk to different people and teach them what they've learned about their life. Like with what you said about people who have a certain level of experience when they get older, they just sometimes want to tell people what they've learned, and you reaching out to them is the perfect opportunity to get people to give their knowledge who otherwise may have not, because they're not as wanting, they don't want to do exactly what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's a very uncommon thing to get on a microphone. Statistically, just the amount of people that do it, it's a very uncommon thing to get on a microphone, get behind a camera, and get in front of a camera. Why would you be behind it? Get in front of a camera and talk about something that's impacted your life and changed your life. And by you having those conversations with people, you probably let a lot of people who wanted to help have an outlet to do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That it benefits them on the flip side too. And that's the biggest thing too, right? Like and this is such a cliche thing, but things are cliche for good reason, because they're generally right. You never know if you don't ask, right? So that's the biggest thing. Like, I'm a little bit of a self-identified introvert. I definitely think I'm more introverted on the scale. And there's like a fear to that, right? There's always in the back of your mind, you're worried that someone's going to say no, but like, really, if that's the worst that can happen, and I should note too, no one's ever said no to a coffee or a conversation or whatever. As long as you're approaching them with well intention. If you're approaching them, you send them either an 18 paragraph email, or secondary to that, you send them an email and say, hey, you just say, I want to pick your brain. Like, that doesn't serve to benefit anyone. But if you approach them like, hey, I'm a young professional, I'm kind of fumbling, and I really like software, and I want to ask you a little bit about like what you do, like what your job looks like. That's an easy conversation, and like someone can look at that and go, I can talk about that for 45 minutes. Right?
There was a mentorship program that we had at my college that was cool, and it gave me a little bit of exposure to what those conversations are like. And I can say without a doubt that there are a lot of people who want to have those conversations. They just maybe don't have the ability to do so.
And there's secondary benefits to it too, not to drag this on either, but like, I met this guy, Jack, who's now a friend. And in the span of literally the first 20 minutes of meeting him, he emailed out like 3 introductions to other people. Like, there's other people out there that are also connectors, right? That want to connect you with other people. And like, it's worth doing, because I think it could just go on forever, right? And you only serve to benefit yourself and other people by having conversations.
And that is a great way to end this podcast, I think, because I love it. We are talking to each other. We are talking about the topic of talking to each other. And I just want to say, people, check out what Cullin's doing. Again, really cool stuff, similar niche to me, great videos, great tweets, great Instagram story posts about the people he's meeting. So check him out on everything. I appreciate having you on the show. It's been really fun meeting you. Definitely want to maybe do some work together in the future as well.
Yeah, Demetri, thank you for having me on the podcast. I look forward to continuing our conversations too into the future.
It's going to be a great time. People, stay safe, stay happy. Maybe try to not talk about it for a day. You know what it is. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.